Hello Facebook, hello YouTube, what is up everybody? This is Ruben and I'm back with another room report. This is going to be our mid-journey valve check that I said that I wanted to do and that I promised that I was going to do. I was curious to see whether or not the valves have moved at all over the course of this whole trip. And for the first part of this trip, we traveled a total of 320 miles, and since I think it was the 29th of September, it is the 5th of September, if I'm not mistaken. Now, no, it is the 4th. No, the 4th of October, excuse me. So for over the past couple days, over the past week and the weekend, I've really just been riding around, doing small trips here and there. The bike's been sitting for a day or so. Just yesterday I went to go to the grocery store, get some snacks. I mean, just typical errands, riding back and forth from a hotel. And now I'm staying with family, with my brother, while I'm still here working through certain things. Because the funeral, I mean, that's the easy part. Now we have to take out all the stuff of his apartment, my dad's apartment, and storage units and everything. So that's why I'm still here this week, to get that done. But yeah, we're gonna find out whether or not the valves have moved at all over the course of this whole trip. So I'm gonna go ahead and check the mileage before we get started. Okay. So as you guys can see, it is 6,578.8, and I believe we were at 6,554 right when we got here. So, you know, it's not that many miles that I put on the bike, just a little bit, almost, 20 something miles, just the typical running around, not much. So we're going to see where the valves are at and whether or not they moved at all. I anticipate that they haven't moved at all, at all, because the bike is still showing symptoms of, well, the experiment. At the end of my 6,000 mile review video, I told everyone the side effects of this experiment, which, one, the valves will clack a little bit louder, and two, you have the potential to stall randomly. But it's only when you're coming to a stop or you're trying to leave from a stop. And I can demonstrate the things that I have done to mitigate those side effects. But as far as riding the bike, I mean, which we have seen, riding it over 300 miles straight, the bike runs just fine. No power loss in the top end, nothing. So, okay, we got the bike taken apart. I'm gonna show you guys the clearances. We are at top dead center. Just give me a moment. Let me turn the light on. Okay, now the light's on. Put you guys in there. All right, top dead center, and we're going to take our experimental measurement. All right, so here we are with 0.102. This is the shim that I use for the experiment, okay? And we're gonna see whether or not they have receded at all. Slip and slide pretty much. This one here. It's also slip and slide. That's great. And now, let's go to the front to see whether or not these ones have moved. You get my hand situated here. All right, make sure you guys can see. Okay. Hold on. Hold on, give it a moment. Okay. Okay, it fits in, but it's a bit snug. Just a bit. Let's check the other one. Alright, that one, it snags just a tiny bit. It's not completely sliding. It snags just a tiny bit. I don't know if you can hear that. Alright. But now let's try the smaller size. One moment. Now I have the shim 0.076. This is the shim that I usually would use and that you typically should use to adjust your valves, okay? Well, 0.08, but this is the closest one that I have to that measurement. And now we're going to check the exhaust valves. And slip and slide, so that's fine, and slip and slide, so that's great. So all in all, they indeed did get a bit tighter, tiny bit tighter, okay? It's very, very slightly, all right? But I would generally have to say that this experiment is a success. Why is it a success? The whole point of me going above spec was to, in turn, help extend my valve adjustment interval, okay? And now, just like I was stating at the end of my trip 1 video, the valve, at least my exhaust valves, they're closer to spec than they were when I first started with my experiment video that I did, a week ago or so. So it worked. We are closer to spec on the exhaust valves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust these back to the spec, what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust them back to the spec of my experiment, and then I'm going to show you guys, I'm going to demonstrate for you guys the drawbacks of riding with your valves higher than spec. There is a little bit of drawback, but there are things that you can do to mitigate those things so that way you can still use your bike the way you need to. And again, this is really just for those who are experiencing valve recession issues like myself. We just rode 300 miles straight in one day and just rode a little bit, over the course of a couple days, and you guys have seen how adjusting my valves above spec at 0.102 millimeters has definitely extended my valve clearance durability by a bit. I bet if I was to ride the bike without changing it at all the way back home, whenever I do, it would still be good. So, but I'm going to show you those drawbacks, okay, and what you need to do to mitigate those things so that way you can ride the bike safely. Okay, I got the bike back together, but now we have a totally different issue. As always, I put the bike back together, plug the, the gas tank back up and everything. I try to fire her up. and I get nothing. It's just nothing. The fuel pump doesn't prime, nothing. Try to fire up, I get nothing. So there is an issue here that needs to be addressed with the fuel pump not coming on. Again, well, let me turn on the light. Alright, so you see down here, fuel pump hose is plugged in. This one here just measures the gas gauge. So the fuel pump is plugged in there. Alright. And let's see. We have on here, all these connections are fine. These connections are fine. I checked all the different connections underneath here and they seem to be fine. There was supposed to be a fuse somewhere. Just give me a moment. It doesn't seem like my neutral indicator wants to work anymore. Okay, that's first gear. Can't go nowhere. That's neutral. I'm going back and forth, but it won't turn on. But if I pull in the clutch, fires right up. Let go, it runs. I don't know what's going on with this thing. This is weird, but you know, that's the least of my problems anyway. Okay, let's get to the demonstration. Alright, I am in a garage, so it might be a bit loud, so I'm going to have to do a voiceover and editing. But before I get started, like I was saying, the issue generally happens when you're coming from a stop and trying to launch. So I'm going to go ahead and fire it up, and then you'll just hear me in the voiceover. So as you can see, so what I have done is I have adjusted, okay, I've adjusted my throttle to be a lot more responsive, okay, so that way when I turn my bars, okay, it actually engages. You want to make sure that you do that, because the issue is when coming from a dead stop, trying to engage. So when the bike would stop. Mainly. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust it back to where it's not as sensitive. We're going to try. Okay, so as you guys see, it stalls very easily when the throttle is not adjusted at all. So I'm going to try to fire it back up. I want to do it now. Okay, there you go. Did it again. Okay, but I'm going to go ahead and adjust the throttle back to where I had it. That's where you want it, with the valves much wider. Okay. Hey guys, this is Ruben here. I want to explain a concept that I forgot to show within the demonstration. I'm here in the in the post-editing phase, and I forgot to mention, when you're also riding the bike, when you're coming to a dead stop, and also when you're trying to leave from a dead stop, you want to blip the throttle. Pretty much what you're trying to do is you're trying to keep the RPMs up, so that way the bike doesn't stall. Okay, and with doing that, you're in conjunction with allowing the throttle to be a lot more responsive, you're able to quickly get the RPMs up, and once the light turns green, or whether you're ready to roll from that stop sign, whatever it is that you're doing, you're able to just go, and then the bike won't stall on you. All right. Unfortunately, these are just the trade-offs and the drawbacks of wanting to extend your valve clearance durability if you are someone who is experiencing valve recession issues like myself. And again, when it comes to this particular experiment, I do not recommend that you do this if you are someone who is not experiencing valve recession issues. If you're someone who's just a typical rider and your valves are just fine, keep them at the suggested valve intervals, and it should be just fine. Okay, this is only for folks who are experiencing valve recession issues like myself, where I have time and time again with 2 different engines, and also through multiple different experiments, whether it be the SGE experiment, the WRE experiment, the ultimate endurance tests, and all the other different valve clearance experiments and valve adjustment updates that I did on the old head. I mean, over and over and over again. If you're someone who rides this bike as I was, 1,000 miles or more a month as an actual commuter bike, it's inevitable that you're going to run into this valve recession issue, problem. Okay, and when you do, you can get a new head. I mean, that will be the proper solution. But just like I've demonstrated again with my experience, getting a new head is only going to give you maybe 2,000 miles of relief, 2,200 miles, possibly even 3,000 miles. It just depends on what your definition of commuting is. But if you were riding like myself, if you were riding as much as I was, 1,300 miles a month or more, it's inevitable that you're going to run into this valve recession issue. And when you do, as I've shown within my experience, you can get a new head, but it's not going to solve it. You're going to be right back at square one with valve recession. So this experiment is something that you can do to extend your valve clearance durability. So that way you're able to do what it is that you need to do. You're able to go to school, go to work, run errands, use the bike as you intended to use the bike, which is as a commuter bike to get you from point A to point B. Okay? But these are just the drawbacks that you have to live with, and these small things that you're going to have to do to modify your riding habits. I mean, that's just what you're going to have to do to make the bike work the way that it's supposed to. So again, do not do this if you do not have valve recession issues. This is only for those who are experiencing valve recession issues. And as we've seen with the results of the experiment, or with the results of showing the valve clearance durability on the valve gap with this video, it only moves a tiny bit. And I'll explain why. When your valves are at the proper gap, they open fully and they close fully. Okay? And in doing that, the valves, they travel the maximum distance to slam up against the valve seats. All right? And so when doing that, it has a lot more kinetic energy and a lot more inertia to pound that valve seat in. Okay? When you have the valves too tight, they open up too much and they don't close all the way. That's what we want to avoid. But what we're doing in this experiment, we're making the valve gap even bigger so that now the valves, they don't necessarily open completely. And because they don't open completely, there's also not as much of a distance that it has to travel, so it doesn't slam up against the seat as hard. And as it continues to ride on, there's also just a lot more of a gap that needs to be depleted before it gets too tight. So on both sides, we are giving the valve clearances a bit more cushion to work with. And also, because the gap is bigger that it has to push up against, it doesn't open up all the way. And with it not opening up all the way, it doesn't have as much leverage to slam those valve seats in. So that's kind of the rundown explanation of why this experiment is, successful. But as we've seen, we still have some type of wear. It's not as much as before, where it was quite tight after only 300 miles, and that was over the span of a week, 60 miles a day. Now we did 300 miles straight in one day, and a little over 20 miles over the course of a couple days, and we see the small wear down to it being in spec. So that's something that I just wanted to explain to you all. I wanted to share with you all. I thought that I wanted to add. Yeah. Till next time, guys. Peace.